Yeah, so we're at Maywood Riverfront Park, formerly contaminated site that is a community asset now, right? And this is the major entry point for the community, right, to the river. And they found levels of lead in the soil and the sediment there that make it toxic waste. So I think this really symbolizes a lot of what's been happening in Southeast LA and the region overall.
You know, probably most folks don't know that the city we're in, Maywood, is actually the most densely populated city in California.
Yeah.
Because it has so few spaces like this park for people to recreate, and it's got a lot of people kind of crowded up in housing. Places like this are absolutely critical. Having the river not be in the state that it's in, but become a place that people can actually play in and take their kids to.
Yeah.
Really, really important.
So also let you know that just down this little piece here, which is supposed to be part of the park, the city just signed a 3-year lease with a company to make it a private parking lot. When there's a victory, you know, there's 6 more challenges that come with that victory, right? So especially with Exide in particular, shutting down the site is one thing, but now we got to get them to do the cleanup right.
Man, you've been like an EJ activist since you were in diapers, pretty much. So.
I tell folks one of my earliest childhood memories, aside from this big Virgen de Guadalupe image that my grandma has in her house, is being pushed in a stroller in marches against the prison that they wanted to build in Boyle Heights.
I'm sure I met you when you were a little kid, because I used to hang with your grandmother, but I didn't. I was probably you know, who's this baby? So, I mean, I grew up in La Puente and Monte, right? Very polluted as well. Places where we're used to so much traffic and so many hazards. When I was growing up, we didn't even know that they were really hazards. They were just the junkyards you like to play in, you know? The fascinating thing to me is how much change has happened. I mean, when we were kind of beginning to do this, and Liberty Hill is a really key early partner and early funder, a lot of people didn't know what environmental justice was. As I kind of came to it, kind of stumbling into it really, because I got approached by folks from Communities for a Better Environment in Liberty Hill to do some research on demonstrating environmental inequity in Los Angeles. And I always tell people the funny thing about that, we started to work together, we got this big grant, and I went to go tell my aunt, my tia Dalia, I said, "Oh, we got a big grant on environmental justice." She said, "Hi, Manuelito, I'm so proud." What is environmental justice, right? And I said that's the fact that hazards are disproportionately in low-income communities of color. And my aunt, who'd grown up in Spanish Harlem, looked at me a little bit sadly and said, "Manuelito, everyone knows that."
I always grew up valuing the accomplishments of our communities, the struggle of our communities to fight off a prison, to fight off an incinerator, to fight off an oil pipeline being proposed under our communities. That was huge, and I understood and knew that was huge.
Of the struggles you named, right, in particular the incinerator and the oil pipeline, those were black-brown struggles. Those were really key struggles in which African Americans and Latinos came together. Often for, you know, people had been aligned on different things, but this was really key when concerned citizens and the Mothers of East LA came together around the incinerator to work around the pipeline. And that, you know, there's great work organizing going on between African Americans and Latinos now, but the debt to that early bridge building is really critical. When you talk to people about environmental issues, they say, "Oh my God, it's horrible that clean air is distributed in a way that's not equitable, or that people can't get access to water." And I think of it often as like a wedge issue, that if we can catch people around environmental justice, then we can make it very clear to them that education is not delivered equally, right?
For sure.
That job opportunities are not delivered equally, that fair policing is not delivered equally, right? And so, I mean, for me, the environmental justice issue has been one that's been really key at kind of trying to open up a broader set of sensibilities around justice.
It's a lot easier to point to those mass structural issues because we can literally point to structures and be like, "Look, this is what's going on. Like, smell the air, right?"
Yeah. You know, I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't wind up getting. In the literature, these are literally called environmental insults, right? And the reason is that when you live in a community and it's just been crisscrossed with freeways and there's toxics and there's the Exide plant being allowed to go on for 20 plus years, poisoning the soil, and no attention being paid until Porter Ranch blows up, and people going, "Oh my God, that happened in a white suburban community," and then thinking, "Oh, we better equalize things." it's an insult every day to people. They feel, looking at this landscape, the sense of devaluation on the part of a society of their lives. And so I think this is such a critical set of issues.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we kind of frame it as being dehumanized.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's how this can be allowed to happen, right? That's how we can be contaminated. That's how our schools can be set up to fail our communities, and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
The work that I've been involved in, that I grew up in, that I continue to do, it's based around community building, right? So when I talk to my grandparents, and I was probably like 19, 20 when I started asking them, like, so why did y'all do this? And it was out of a love for family and a love for community, right?
This is hard work.
Yeah.
How do you recharge?
Being able to do it intergenerationally, that recharges me. To be able to meet somebody, and then I call up my grandma, my grandpa, and I'm like, hey, do you know them? Yeah, give me all the cheese bin on them. All right, then, cool.
One of my fondest memories was being at the 1994 March against Prop 187 and having my 2 kids with me, right? Like going like, okay, this is how we roll.
Yeah.
This is who we are.
Definitely.
This is a family activity.